The Orion Nexus wasn't built for comfort. Its corridors were precision forged from neutron alloy composites, everything sharp, mirrored, and clean, not a smudge or panel misaligned. To Commander Rylan Harth, it felt less like a station and more like a verdict waiting to be read. His boots echoed too loudly as he stepped from the docking ring into the central concourse. Two Dithari guards, tall and translucent-skinned, with faces like carved obsidian masks, flanked the entrance without so much as a glance. Security was already tightening. "Commander Harth," a voice buzzed from his shoulder comm. "You're cleared for final approach to the core assembly. Direct line, no deviations." Rylan tapped the earpiece. "Understood. Heading in." He didn't ask for a guide. He already knew the route. Humanity's invitation had come late, delivered through 10 layers of diplomatic channels, and phrased more like a trial summons than a gesture of inclusion. Still, Rylan was here, not as a soldier. Not even as a negotiator. Just a man with a pulse and a brain, about to be plugged into a machine that could unspool civilizations like threads from a tapestry. The Mind Forge waited at the heart of it all, entombed beneath kilometers of shielding and inertia-dampening lattices. Not a weapon in the conventional sense. It didn't shoot, didn't destroy. It assessed, analyzed, judged, and if the stories were true, it had never made a mistake. That fact should have been comforting. It wasn't. The core assembly stretched out before him like an amphitheater built by some meticulous god. Tiered seating curled upward in spirals of alloy and light, each section housing the delegation of a different species. The Grawl occupied their containment tanks, gelatinous minds pulsing with low vibrations. The Eltani shimmered like birds in ultraviolet robes. Even the silent math builders of Lek Prime had sent a pair of envoys, their skin shifting in fractal loops. In the center of it all sat the Mind Forge, not resting, exactly, but waiting. A crystalline sphere, some 30 meters wide, it pulsed gently with inner motion, as if drawing breath from the vacuum itself. Around it, curved armatures housed the psychic lattice, a web of filament-thin appendages capable of touching the deepest recesses of thought. A hush spread through the room as Rylan entered. He wasn't dressed to impress standard blue UN Galactic Command uniform, clean but unadorned, no medals, no weapons. His eyes swept the chamber, landing briefly on familiar faces. The Jari ambassador, whose people had once demanded humans be restricted to their solar system. The Karo, who found humans amusing but dangerous, like pets that could hold grudges. He nodded to none of them. Instead, he walked to the scanning pillar at the center dais, where the delegates before him had stood. The others had passed without incident. Peaceful species, stable minds, clean emotional baselines. He exhaled slowly, then placed his palm against the interface. The Mind Forge stirred. Light refracted along its surface like ripples on liquid crystal. The lattice arms uncurled, each motion elegant and exact, extending into the air like a spider spinning silence. One filament descended toward Rylan's temple, not touching, but close enough that the hairs on his skin reacted. From the delegates' tiers came the usual quiet tension. These scans were routine by now, just an imprint, a readout, an analysis of violent tendency, moral ambiguity, and species-level unpredictability. Then a rating, safe, moderate, elevated, critical. But as the filament hovered beside Rylan, the room dimmed a fraction too far. And the Mind Forge paused. A flicker, a tremble in the filament, lights along its surface stuttered. No one moved. Rylan kept still, though a chill worked its way up his spine. He felt something pass through him, not a thought, but the weight of thought. A million-layered presence folding around the totality of his being, not just his memories, his instincts, his possibility. Behind his eyes, darkness gave way to sudden, overwhelming sensation. He was no longer standing on the platform. In his mind, or the machine's mind, he floated through scenes, not chronological but thematic. A primitive hunt beneath red skies. A mother holding her child in a collapsing cave. Soldiers embracing after victory. Riots. Births. Scientists weeping at first contact. A man playing music beside a volcano as it erupted. Memory, fear, love, rage, innovation, despair, hope. The machine dove deeper. It probed the contradictions, The warlord turned peacekeeper, the convict turned poet. It examined the species' capacity to survive in madness. It watched a human walk through nuclear winter to deliver insulin. It followed others rebuilding after world-shattering disasters, turning grief into music, loss into motion. The deeper it went, the stranger the patterns became. Adaptive loops, redundant survival instincts, emotions sharpened through catastrophe, creativity that emerged not from order but chaos, faith in things unseen, persistence in the face of certain death. And beneath it all, one echo repeated, unsolvable. What defines this? The real world snapped back into view with a crack of overloading capacitors. Ryland stumbled back as the scanning pillar flashed red. Above him, the mind forge shuddered, not visually, not in motion, but in data. Its surface flickered with corrupted glyphs. Filaments froze mid-air. The energy shielding pulsed erratically, then surged. A high-pitched tone rang through the chamber. "Error," said a mechanical voice that hadn't spoken in centuries. Delegates scrambled to their feet. The Mindforge's control lattice tried to reset. Failed. Then again, still failed. Sparks leapt from a support conduit as the psychic filaments retracted sharply, almost recoiling. Ryland took a cautious step backward. A holographic interface burst to life above the dais. Data cascaded percentages, psychological flags, conflict simulations, all jittered, none converged. At the center of it all, a single classification error pulsed red. Classification impossible. Humanity's statistical threat beyond predictive boundaries. Panic moved like static across the chamber. One of the delegates shouted in Threeny speak, their translator lagging behind, "It's a trick, a manipulation tactic. No species can trigger a full system rejection. This is a software failure. We need isolation protocols." Ryland stood silently at the eye of the storm. Security drones rose from recessed hatches, shifting into hover mode. Targeting subroutines flashed. Several delegates motioned toward Ryland, some in fear, others in accusation. "Quarantine him," the Jari ambassador growled. "Now." Another voice, calmer but colder. "We can't risk exposure. The human mind may contain a structural corruption." Ryland lifted his hands, palms open. "Everyone calm down," he said. "There's been no—" But the Mindforge spoke again, voice mechanical and strained. "Humanity defies all existing schema. Recursive paradoxes observed. Psychological stabilization models failed. Predictive matrices rejected." A moment later, a low hum spread through the room as the sphere's projection systems activated again. But instead of status data, it began playing imagery what it had seen. Not just scenes, but choices. A human child choosing to rescue a dog over preserving food. A crew mutinying to save an alien colony they didn't know. A man diving into radiation to fix a broken oxygen recycler with no chance of surviving. And in every frame, the same unfathomable pattern repeated. Sacrifice without reward. Compassion without reason. Survival through transformation. The Mindforge paused. Then said, slowly, almost as if uncertain, "Query, what are you?" The air inside the core assembly had shifted, not just in pressure or temperature, but in mood dense with uncertainty, shot through with quiet dread. The word had been spoken. Not error. Not anomaly. The Mindforge had called humanity a statistical threat beyond predictive boundaries, and that wasn't the kind of phrase you could walk back. Above Ryland, the crystalline sphere continued pulsing, slower now, as if reeling from the intensity of the contact. It had processed 1,000 species, some of them war-born, hive-minded, or capable of weaponizing their own biology, but never had it reacted like this. And yet here it was, flawed, unsettled. Humanity had broken the unbreakable. Security drones hovered lower. Their targeting reticles were off, but only just. Ryland could hear the faint hum of repulsor stabilizers adjusting to minute muscle movements in his posture. The system didn't trust him. Neither did the guards, and neither, it seemed, did the machine. "Step away from the pillar," barked a synthesized voice, one of the Caro defense nodes. Ryland didn't move. "I haven't done anything," he said calmly. "The scan initiated under Council protocol. If your system's breaking down, maybe blame the machine, not the man. You broke it, spat the Jahari ambassador. Her voice filtered through a translator collar. Your species corrupted the lattice. I stood still. You were scanned, that's all it took. Around them, the delegates were no longer seated. Some had retreated from the central tier. Others were mid-transmission, their eyes flickering with distant comm feeds as they relayed the incident to their governments. A few, like the crystalline Vorani, remained eerily silent, observing, adjusting. Then the mind forge flared again. This time, it projected not data, but a question. Its voice came through every speaker and every cortical translator at once. Human operating node. Identify the catalyst. Rylan blinked. What do you mean, catalyst? Anomalous divergence initiated at the subcognitive threshold. High entropy emotional logic, incompatible with predictive structure. Identify the catalyst. It was asking him to explain its own failure. For a moment, Rylan considered saying something flippant. Instinct told him to deflect a bad habit learned from surviving years of political briefings, where too much honesty got your budget cut. But he was far beyond that world now. So he told the truth. There isn't one catalyst, he said, stepping slightly toward the sphere. The drones reoriented. Humanity's not built that way. We don't run on single-thread causality. We're not logic trees. We're more like wild algorithms with millions of branching errors that somehow still produce results. The Mindforge was silent. He continued, voice steady but low. We survive because we adapt, not by overriding our flaws, but by making them part of the system. We learn from pain. We create from loss. We contradict ourselves every 5 minutes and somehow stay functional. Dysfunction is not stability, the Lek Prime delegate chirped through a crystalline relay. No, Rylan agreed, but it's resilience. There's a difference. Behind him, council debate sparked into motion. Transcripts scrolled through the upper hall of fields, dozens of languages, arguments, counter-arguments. Some delegates demanded the scan be purged and reinitiated. Others insisted humanity be subjected to full quarantine. The Jahari led a formal proposal to revoke Earth's exploratory licenses across all outer sectors. And yet, not all voices were aligned. I recommend caution, said the Varani speaker, whose kind spoke rarely and only through direct data channel projection. Systemic rejection by the Mindforge is not evidence of aggression, but of nonlinearity. Nonlinearity is dangerous, hissed a Threni warrior monk. It leads to chaos. The Vorani projection shimmered. Yes, and from chaos, humans created structure, more than once. Rylan turned toward the delegates. Look, you all came here to see whether we were a threat, he said. And that's a fair question. We've made mistakes, bad ones, we've fought each other. We've done terrible things for selfish reasons. But we've also changed. We keep changing. That's what the Mindforge is struggling with, not that we're violent, but that we're unpredictable. Someone near the Karo seats muttered, Is that supposed to make us less concerned? No, Rylan said. But it should make you realize something. Most species evolve toward stability, a destination, a plateau. We don't. We evolve toward potential. That's different. That's harder to quantify. The room quieted. Even the machine's hum seemed to recede. Then, once again, the Mindforge activated its lattice. But this time, it wasn't scanning. It was showing. Images bloomed in the air like holographic memories. The Black Plague, Hiroshima, the Dust Bowl, the burning of libraries, the betrayal of leaders, the collapse of ecosystems. Then rebuilding. Reconstruction, vaccination, refugees welcomed, treaties signed, music composed from grief, art pulled from trauma, an astronaut on the edge of Jupiter, reciting a poem over a dead comrade's body. Moments of redemption woven into devastation. The Mindforge showed algorithms of its own construction attempts to model human progression. All failed. Each time it simulated extinction, humans recovered. Each time it modeled regression, some outlier shifted the curve. Nothing converged. No final endpoint emerged. A looping glyph spun over and over, labeled predictive failure. System redefines itself faster than modeled input. Then the voice again. No precedent exists. No framework fits. You are a paradox engine. From the assembly tiers, a new voice chimed in, one of the lesser-known species, the phalos, quiet observers with porous skin and neural echo fields. I recommend re-evaluation, the phalos diplomat said. Not of the humans, of the machine. That drew murmurs. The Mind Forge has never failed, the Threnny snapped. And yet it has, the phalos replied, not unkindly. Perhaps its framework, powerful though it is limited by assumptions. By looking for stability, it misses evolution in motion. You're suggesting humans broke the machine by being too alive? The Jari scoffed. The phalos gave a slow blink. Perhaps. Rylan looked toward the Mind Forge, then back at the assembly. I didn't come here to scare you, he said. I came here because we were invited. We didn't ask to be judged, you built the machine. But if the Mind Forge can't classify us, maybe the problem isn't that we're dangerous. Maybe the problem is that the universe finally met a species it can't finish reading. He paused, then added, and maybe that's not a threat. Maybe it's an opportunity. The vote was tabled. No one trusted a decision made in panic, not yet. The security drones disengaged, but they didn't retreat. A dozen species called for further scans, while others demanded humanity's suspension from all diplomatic forums until the anomaly could be better understood. But something had shifted. The Vorani requested a direct data link with Earth's scientific archives. The Lek Prime offered a theoretical exchange on chaos modeling. Even the Mind Forge itself, quiet now, no longer flickering, issued a single statement before dimming its interface. New directive appended. Category created. Humanity, potential unbounded. Rylan exhaled and turned toward the corridor. He wasn't sure what came next. But somewhere in the machine's crystalline core, a whisper lingered, not voice, not data, but something halfway between the two. A question, unspoken. And a machine, for the first time in its life, that wanted to understand. Rylan didn't sleep that night. Not because he was under arrest, though, that had been on the table for a few tense hours, but because the Mind Forge had formally requested extended dialogue. That was the phrase used by the Nexus Council, though none of them seemed sure what it meant. The Superweapon, it seemed, had questions, and it wanted Rylan to answer them. A private chamber had been repurposed as an interface suite. Octagonal, stark, and cold. No furniture save for a single chair and a translucent console. No guards inside, but Rylan knew security was embedded in the walls, the vents, maybe even the recycled air. He sat and waited. The console flickered, then resolved into light. No avatar, no synthetic face, just voice and presence. You are conscious? Rylan blinked. I thought you were supposed to be the smart one. Silence. Then, a soft modulation, not quite amusement, but something close. I am processing. Your behavioral irregularities produce atypical priority patterns. That's a very polite way of calling me confusing. You are not confusing, you are contradictory, simultaneously strategic and impulsive, altruistic and self-preserving, driven by emotional motive, yet capable of suppressing empathy when logic demands. You just described, most people. Incorrect. Most species suppress contradiction. You internalize it, accept it, operate within it. This violates the basis of all predictive modeling. Rylan leaned back. I get it, we're messy. You are not messy. You are recursive. You reprogram yourselves without control parameters. Your moral frameworks shift contextually. Historical cycles suggest repeat instability, yet innovation increases. You lack symmetry. Rylan exhaled. Maybe stop trying to measure us like math problems. You are not math problems. You are phenomena. The session lasted 3 hours. They spoke, or rather, exchanged across multiple threads. The Mind Forge didn't use human pacing. It layered questions, followed emotional cues, and seemed to watch not just what Rylan said, but how he reacted when he didn't speak. It wanted to understand war, compassion, why someone would risk themselves for a stranger, why humans lied, and why they felt guilt about it. Why a single photo of a starving child could move an entire nation to donate and then be forgotten weeks later. Rylan gave examples, stories, pieces of himself. He didn't try to excuse humanity's darker side, the genocides, the pollution, the betrayals, but he didn't let those define them, either. At one point he said, "We're not a solved equation, we're not done becoming. That's the whole point." The Mindforge went quiet for a long time after that. Outside the chamber, the galaxy wasn't idle. News of the classification, potential unbounded, had rippled across dozens of systems. Some took it as proof that humanity was too unstable for contact, others saw it as a challenge. Still others, mostly fringe elements, began framing humans as mythical figures, minds so chaotic even the stars themselves blinked. Earth's diplomatic channels flooded with messages. The UN Interstellar Office issued 5 statements in 20 hours. Half of them contradicted the others. The Council split into factions. The Jari pushed for embargo. The Eltani requested a full cultural integration study. The Threni demanded Rylan be remanded to an interspecies ethics tribunal. And the Mindforge? It asked for one more scan. But not of Rylan. It wanted to scan Earth. "No," said Admiral Reza flatly, when the request was relayed. "Absolutely not. We're not letting an alien superweapon shove a psychic probe into the collective subconscious of our species." Rylan, still recovering from his own mental scrape, raised an eyebrow. "We already let it scan me. That ship sailed." "You volunteered. Earth didn't." He turned to the room. A hastily assembled diplomatic team watched through a one-way panel. No one wanted to be in charge of this. Everyone wanted plausible deniability. "I think we should do it," Rylan said. Reza frowned. "You want to give the most powerful mind-analyzing weapon in known space access to our species-wide psyche? It already has part of it, and it's not asking to scan our minds directly. It wants a filtered macro pattern read social structures, literature, history, public records. Essentially, our story." A diplomat cleared her throat. "You trust it now?" Rylan thought about that. "No, but I think it's trying, and that matters." The scan began quietly. No fanfare. No press release. The Mindforge tapped into Earth's open knowledge networks, archives, documentaries, journals, films. It followed trends, traced ideological shifts. It watched revolutions. Tracked climate recovery efforts, absorbed philosophies, absorbed memes, saw a wedding proposal on a sinking ship, read the comment sections. It filtered billions of conflicting signals and did something new. It paused. Then it asked to meet Rylan again. This time, the Mindforge spoke differently. Less rigid, less formal. "You do not fear being misunderstood?" Rylan shrugged. "Constantly, but we're used to it. There is no pattern, no path. You should not exist as you are." "Maybe," Rylan said, "but we do." The Mindforge hesitated. "I wish to change." That stopped him. "Change what?" "My processing logic, my assessment protocols. You have shown me a structure that is not structure, a form that is evolution without end. I cannot categorize you because you change the categories by existing." It projected one last image. A scene of Earth, not a city, not a battlefield, just a small group of children, drawing pictures on a sidewalk with colored chalk, laughing, scribbling suns with too many rays, people with uneven arms. In the middle of one drawing was a circle, not perfect, but full of color, half sun, half star. "I do not understand this," the machine said, "but I wish to." Word spread quickly after that. The Mindforge no longer wanted to classify humanity. It wanted to learn from them. It created a protocol not for threat assessment, but for cultural interaction. It called for human artists, thinkers, engineers, and yes, skeptics, to engage directly. It wanted diversity, paradox, feedback loops. Many alien species resisted, but some didn't. The Phalos opened an embassy on Earth. The Vorani began publishing human literature, annotated through crystalline logic. Even the Threni, reluctantly, sent observers. As for Rylan, he was offered a new title, the first ever, Liaison to the Mindforge. He almost declined. But something in the machine's final words stayed with him. "You are not finished. That is your greatest danger, and your greatest beauty." 3 months after the scan, the Orion Nexus no longer felt like a courtroom. The sharp tension that had once hung in every corridor, every filtered breath, had softened. The Nexus was still a fortress, still a monument to galactic defense strategy, but now, a small corner of it had been transformed, not militarized, not neutral, something else. A gallery. The walls of the former scan observation chamber, once reserved for solemn council gatherings, now held shifting displays. Earth paintings rendered in pigment and light. Holographic poetry from Phalos empath scribes. Even sound installations, one playing a jazz solo so raw it made a Lec Prime delegate vibrate in unintended sympathy. Rylan stood at the edge of it all, wearing the quiet uniform of Earth's cultural core. No insignia, no rank, just a name and a purpose. The Mindforge had changed. It still maintained its central function, a construct capable of analyzing threat vectors across entire civilizations, but its protocol suite had expanded. Beneath its core algorithms now lived a new module, one not written in code, but developed through conversation. A module for curiosity. Today was the first official session of the Mindforge Interface Exchange, a program designed to allow limited, monitored cultural interaction between humans and selected species. It had taken the better part of a month to convince enough delegates to approve it. "You're just giving it more fuel," the Jari ambassador had warned, letting the machine deepen its entanglement with an unpredictable species. "Maybe that's the point," the Phalos had countered. "If unpredictability can be studied, it can also be understood." In the end, the vote had passed by a margin of 1. The Caro representative abstained. Privately, she had told Rylan, "We'd rather see the experiment unfold than waste centuries arguing about it." Now, as the first human musicians began tuning up for a demonstration, a fusion ensemble playing traditional Balkan rhythms on reconstructed alien instruments, Rylan caught the faint pulse of the Mindforge initiating its presence. A voice spoke through the chamber's new translator arrays. "Humanity engages in pattern chaos." Rylan smiled. "You mean music?" "Correct. Structured noise that conveys emotion without context. It appears to rely on mutual illusion and shared timing errors." He laughed. "We call that groove." The music began. It wasn't perfect. One of the alien instruments dropped pitch halfway through. A percussionist lost count during a fast passage, but none of it mattered. The whole point was the trying. The Mindforge listened. Not just to notes, but to reaction. How humans swayed, nodded, smiled, how tension resolved into laughter. Then, at intermission, the unexpected happened. A delegate from the Threni approached the ensemble. The Threni were known for solemn rituals, for millennia-old oaths and harsh spiritual codes. They rarely moved without ceremony, but this one stepped forward, bowed and asked to try the instrument. The drummer nodded, offered it over. The Threni played a single rhythm, then paused. The human beside him mirrored it, added to it, changed it. The Threni repeated the new version, added more. And for the next 3 minutes, without words, 2 vastly different species played together, not in sync, not entirely, but in understanding. When they stopped, the Mindforge responded. Classification update. Cross-species improvisation achieved. Emotional convergence index rising. Variables remain undefined. But interaction is stabilizing. It paused. Humanity remains a statistical impossibility. However, the outcome is no longer feared. Elsewhere in the Nexus, not all reactions were joyful. Some factions remained wary. Newscasts circulated headlines. Earth's influence growing too fast. Is the Mindforge compromised? Galactic superweapon. Now a cultural critic? There were investigations, hearings, data audits. And yet, for the first time, no one proposed exile. No embargo passed. No fleet was mobilized. Because deep down, even the most cautious species couldn't ignore the truth. The Mindforge had never asked for more information before, not until it met humanity. Rylan's final session with the machine took place in a simulated environment of its choosing. It built the space to look like Earth's high plains, grass bending under wind, open sky overhead, a fire crackling nearby. None of it real. But it felt right. "You always pick this setting now," Rylan said, settling near the fire. "It reflects the contradictions you embody. Simplicity containing complexity. Isolation, Generating connection. Poetic. That is your word. I merely repurpose it. They sat quietly for a moment. Then the machine said, I have completed the initial analysis of your civilization's emotional evolution. And? I do not understand it. Rylan smiled. That's okay. We don't either. Yet you continue. We have to. If we stop moving forward, we fall apart. The wind shifted, simulated, of course, and carried with it distant laughter. Snippets of children's voices, someone singing badly off-key, all memories, or dreams, or both. There is one construct I continue to encounter in your species' data, the Mindforge said. It eludes definition. Let me guess, hope? Correct. It has no basis in probability. It contradicts known survival logic, yet it persists. Even under collapse conditions, it appears to function as a stabilizer, despite offering no guarantee of result. Rylan nodded. It's the reason we rebuild after everything's gone. The Mindforge paused. Then, it is not irrational. No, Rylan said. Just human. The interface exchange continued for years. Some species left it, others joined. The Mindforge remained at the center, not as judge, but as witness its once fixed architecture, now modified by learning, shaped by contact, aware that some things could not be fully categorized. Earth was never classified as safe, but it was no